Bishop Matthew of Bresthena, close friend of Saint Nektarios, leader of the old calendarists, and one of the most controversial figures in recent Orthodox history. This video is not going to focus on the entire life story of Bishop Matthew of Bresthena, as other videos have covered this, which you can find on YouTube. I will simply be talking about him in a straightforward manner and the controversies surrounding his name and the things that he did, debunking a lot of the claims about him that I think are really scandalously spread around. So before we talk about the old calendar's position of world orthodoxy falling into schism after the calendar reform, let's talk about one of the most controversial things Bishop Matthew did, is the ordinations. First things first, the ordinations were taking place during a very hard time for Greece, the war. So at the time it was extremely difficult for other bishops in the Resistance to come and aid Matthew with the ordinations. So, as the only standing bishop in Greece that would recognize the anathemas of the new calendar from 1583, 1587, and 1593, he was given a blessing by the entire jurisdiction to perform the ordinations without any other bishops present. One might say this is never found in church history and it's just explicit breaking of the canons. Yet this is simply not true. Ordinations of a bishop by a single bishop are found throughout church history. Modern scholars and ancient Christians all testify to this. Bishop Matthew was given written permission by the other bishops in the Resistance to perform these ordinations. They were present spiritually. It seems that throughout church history, the only reason that bishops are considered necessary to be present during an ordination of a bishop is to act as witnesses. And now that we have recognized the validity of single-handed ordinations and the fact that other bishops in the Resistance were aware of these ordinations, we know that he had witnesses in the context that these bishops knew the ordinations were going to take place and gave their blessings. Another false claim about the ordinations is that Bishop Matthew's spiritual daughter, the nun Mother Miriam, helped him put his hand on the head of the bishops because he was paralyzed at the time due to a stroke. This terrible accusation is certainly empty. We know this by the fact the ordinations took place in 1948, yet Bishop Matthew's stroke took place a few months before his repose in 1950. Despite many saying Bishop Matthew was extremely rigid and didn't actually speak to the confession of the Greek old calendarists, let us remind ourselves of Chrysostomos of Florina's appeal to the clergy and monastics of the Greek Church, where he called the new calendar graceless and those who followed it schismatics and heretics. There is little to no room for interpretation in these words. This is the confession that Bishop Matthew reposed clinging to. It is the confession of the old calendarists originally. Yet Chrysostomos of Florina departed from this confession and later became a heretic, persecutor of the old calendarists, and a Sergianist, communist supporter. And before you tell me about the dreams of Joseph the Hesychast, which one? There are several. Worms in a Eucharistic spoon, him on a rock in the water, jumping to the holy mountain, one of Bishop Matthew setting skeets on fire. There are several. Which one? Were any of them real? And if they were real, why are there so many variations of the story? And even if one of those dreams were actually a real dream, the Philokia tells us to not listen to our dreams, and certainly not uproot our entire spiritual positions because of a single dream, apparition, spiritual visitation, or anything of the sort. It is simply not the Orthodox phronema. I think it's important to note that the old calendars weren't just fighting date changing. Even though calendar reform was anathematized 3 times, the whole point was that it was a papist innovation, and following the innovation would be following the papists. It was an act of unionism, aka ecumenism. They were fighting against the corruption of the Orthodox confession. Let us remind ourselves of the eloquent words of St. Mark of Ephesus, the pillar of Orthodoxy. I am convinced that the further I depart from the Patriarch and from those like him, the Latin-minded, the closer do I draw near to God, all the faithful, and the Holy Fathers. And the more I am separated from them, by so much more am I united to the truth in the Holy Fathers. Throughout many letters, the old calendars frequently called the new calendar exactly what it was, a papist innovation, frequently citing Mark of Ephesus in their struggle against it, showing they knew exactly what they were fighting against. And the wonderful and all-glorious Holy Trinity was with them in this fight, the sign of the cross appearing 2 times, once in 1925 and once in 1937, both times on September 14th, the exaltation of the Holy Cross according to the old calendar. In 1925, over the Church of St. John the New Theologian on Mount Hymettus, and in 1937, over the Church of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross on Mount Cophinus. Both of these events had many witnesses, and yes, both of these churches were under the old calendar and parts of the Resistance. Notably, they are 12 years apart, a very holy number in the Orthodox faith. I believe that this shows God's favor in the old calendarists in a very particular way. In the same way that God's favor was upon every single one of the 12 apostles, God has been at their side through each tribulous year, since the attack of the Orthodox tradition. I think this is a very important point, but I'm going to go over it pretty briefly because there's a lot to unpack here and a lot more research to be done if you're actually interested in it. The old calendarist movement in Greece was heavily persecuted by the Greek police and the new calendarists, but the Matthewites in particular were extremely persecuted. 3 times, I believe it was, Bishop Matthew was taken to court for his confession of true orthodoxy. One of these state-sanctioned persecutions actually led to him being put on house arrest by armed guards at the monastery. Earlier, when I was talking about the ordinations, I mentioned the spiritual daughter of Bishop Matthew, the nun Mother Miriam. Mother Miriam was slanderously accused of some very horrific crimes, such as extortion, kidnapping, and human trafficking. She was prosecuted, found guilty, and reposed in prison. And lo and behold, today, the truth has been revealed. We have members of World Orthodoxy admitting that this story was completely fabricated to make the monasteries look bad. Thus, Mother Miriam died a martyr behind bars for the Orthodox faith. May we have her holy prayers. And yes, that photo of her in the casket was actually her. She was a schema nun, and Bishop Matthew, for that matter, was a schema monk. Speaking of reposing, let us speak of Bishop Matthew's repose. I will read you an excerpt from the book, The Life and Teachings of Our Father Among the Saints, Matthew the New Confessor. Page 41. As the funeral was in the summer, and in those days they did not have refrigeration for the deceased, many worried that the body of Archbishop Matthew would stink or start to decompose. But as mentioned before, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ glorifies his saints. Even after several days of intense heat, the body of St. Matthew did not begin to smell or decompose at all. In fact, as St. Matthew's body was brought out of the chapel of Martyr Marina, in the courtyard of the Covenant, his body began to exude heavenly fragrant myrrh, which abundantly flowed from his feet. All present marveled at this miracle. Some of the myrrh was collected and distributed as a blessing to all present. Even after this, St. Matthew's body poured forth the heavenly myrrh, continuing through the burial service. Upon exhuming his relics some years later, the heavenly myrrh continued to pour forth. And to this day, his relics pour forth myrrh. This myrrh and his holy and precious relics have been known to be wonder-working, and can be venerated today at the Theotokos Covenant in Keratea. It is also documented that he didn't have any rigor mortis after he reposed, and that his body even began to sweat. Venerable Father, your blessing. My name is PK, and I am a resident of Athens. On September 7th, 2011, at 4:30, I boarded the ISAP, Athens Piraeus Electric Railway, train in the direction of Phalairo. At the Omina station, due to work on the line, traffic in the direction of Piraeus was interrupted. Therefore, passengers had to wait at the station for another train, so I was waiting in the subway of Omina for the train to Piraeus. Sitting on a bench, I found a dark-colored bag forgotten next to me. I then wanted to find the owner to hand it over. I asked a gentleman who was sitting next to me, and he pointed to a small, elderly clergyman as the owner of the bag, and I returned it to him. The train came and the clergyman took his bag, got on board, and with the other passengers sat opposite to me. There were only the two of us sitting in those seats. As the clergyman sat down, a black apron with red embroidery appeared on his waist. The great and angelic schema. "Excuse me, are you from Russia?" I asked him. "No," he replied. "I am Greek." "But," I said to him, "I have seen in Russia how the monks wear this." "Aye, my child," he answered, pointing with the index finger of his right hand to the sky. "I am above them, and I wear this." Then he asked me what I did for a living. I replied that I was currently working on orders and enriching my knowledge by learning foreign languages. "My child," he said, "there will be much evil and misery in this world." "Elder," I replied, "they have always existed, but now they are happening more frequently. But God keeps the world, because there is also the good portion of people." "My child," he continues, "the good ones are few and far between. God is wrathful. The financial crisis is only the beginning. We will see many natural disasters, such as the opening of the earth, the moving of mountains, diseases mutating and developing badly, new incurable diseases and mainly of psychological nature. The sciences such as psychiatry and psychology and the professionals who serve them will find no place to go and no place to settle, because the world is unimaginable. The earth will not produce. Food will be a luxury. That is why there will be conflicts between people and civil wars." "These things, Elder, are already in the news," I replied. "It will get worse, my child," he says. "For all the things I have told you, we are at 1 minute to 1, not 5 minutes to 5. "Well, Elder, will there be so much suffering to arise, and will no compassion come from heaven?" I said to him again. Then, distressed, as if scolding me, he replied, "Are you listening?" he said. "I said, I told you, we are at 1 minute to 1, not 5 minutes to 5. As we arrived at the Petrolona station, he opened his bag and handed me a blue book. "Thanks," I say. "How much?" "Nothing," he says. "A gift, for you." I was so absorbed by the shocking things he told me that I forgot to ask him what his monastery was like. The train arrived at Falerio. I shook his hand. "Your blessing," I said. "Goodbye, my child," he replied. I got off with a pleasant dizziness. I look at the photograph on the cover of the book and see that the clergyman who was depicted in the book was the unknown clergyman of the train. Matthew, who fell asleep in 1950. The cover photo is the icon of Saint Matthew. It is not possible. I don't know him. I have never called upon him. He is unknown to me. I cannot have this grace. Perhaps it is someone who looks like him, I said to myself, shocked. Then, after reading the book, and the website that the book recommended, the descriptions that the book gave, and the icons that I saw during my visit to this monastery, I am now sure that I have met Saint Matthew in the flesh. May we all have his blessing.